Komið sæl og velkomin í þáttinn. Þetta verður með aðeins öðru sniðeldur venjulega sem að þetta viðtal við fyrsta transmann, að ég held bara í heimi sem að hefur fór alla leið í þessu. Það hann Buck Angel. Buck mun kynna sig sjálfur í viðtalinu, þannig að ég ætla ekki að vera að hafa fyrir því hér. En ég vil biðjast afsökunar á röddin í mér, bæði í viðtalinu og í þættinum í dag. Ég búin að vera mjög veikur síðustu vikuna og það var annarkvort að taka viðtali við hann núna eða bíða í mánuð þangað til hann laus aftur því hann mjög upptekinn þessa dagana og ég var mjög heppinn að ná honum í viðtali hérna til mín. Að við ætlum að ræða málefni sem varða transbörn sérstaklega og mér finnst þetta gríðarlega þarft umræðaefni, ekki síst fyrir foreldra til að upplýsa sig þetta málefni því að þetta hefur verið mikið í umræðinu undanfarið og eins og við komum inn á þá ég á þeirri línu að það sé klárlega þörf á þessu upp að vissu marki því að það eru einstaklingar að núti sem þurfa virkilega á þess að halda og við megum ekki bregðast þeim einstaklingum sem eru í þeirri stöðu. En ég ætla að leyfa viðtalinu bara að tala sínu máli, gjöru það svo vel. All right, Buck. Thanks for being with me here.
Thank you, friend.
I can call you Buck, right?
Of course. You can call me whatever you want to call me.
I'll be trying to put Icelandic subtitles on this interview when it airs, but I'll see how much of a hassle that's going to be end up being.
Okay.
So thank you for agreeing to this little interview. I have a feeling I got a little bit lucky to catch you as early as I did, since I've noticed you've been blowing up on social media a bit recently, right?
Well, I don't know if I'm blowing up, but I'm actually active, I guess more what I want to say. I'm active in pushing back on a lot of this nonsense.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the reason why we decided to talk, right?
Yes, that's right, my friend.
So if you could maybe just start by telling us who you are. I mean, I obviously know, but for the listeners.
Yes, so my name is Buck Angel. I am a transsexual man, and what that means is that I'm born biologically female, and I transitioned using medical technology on some level and got a diagnosis of what we call gender dysphoria 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, I started transitioning medically by using testosterone to masculinize myself, as well as I'd have what we call here top surgery, but it's basically a double mastectomy and remove my breasts. And I do not have bottom surgery, which is I do not have genital surgery. And so I don't really like to use the word activist anymore because it's been really hijacked by a bunch of crazy people. I would say that I'm very outspoken about transitioning of young children. And that's really sort of the platform I'm sort of speaking on today.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So lately you've been facing a lot of backlash from, well, I don't want to say the trans community, but at least from several groups, right? Could you tell us why that is?
Oh, sure. So we have this new sort of, and remember, I think it's very important for people here to understand I'm 30 years, right, in transition. So I'm a 60-year-old person at this point in my life, and I have done and been around for a while and done a lot of activism in this community. So today we have a newer group of people calling themselves transgender, and if you notice, I call myself transsexual.
Yeah.
And yes, so there's a distinction there. I have a diagnosis. I live in a medical space. I have what called a mental disorder, gender dysphoria. I'm perfectly okay with all of those things. It helped me survive to this point. But back to your point. So today we have a thing called trans rights activists. And these trans rights activists do not align with a lot of people like myself who are transsexual people. The trans rights activists we feel have actually taken over or co-opted or appropriated or hijacked my community, and they have a completely different idea of what it means to be transgender than I do or people like myself. So today what's happening is that they have brought children into this equation, and that is not something I or many people like myself believe is actually possible. We can get more in depth than that, but I think that really, I really stand solid in my idea that I don't think a child can actually medically transition.
Yeah. We really agree on that. To be honest, with the age thing.
Yes.
I want to ask you specifically because you sent a letter of concern to the Icelandic government due to new laws that are being passed. Would you tell us how you even knew Iceland was passing such a law? Because I didn't. And what prompted you to write that letter?
So somebody reached out to me on my Twitter. So it wasn't you. I don't think it was some other. He's a gay rights activist out of. Gosh, I'm so sorry. I can try to look him up. But he's a gay rights activist in Iceland, and he reached out to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, Buck, this bill is passing because so many of these bills, or whatever you want to call them, laws, are passing, calling them gender affirming care." And calling them, gender affirming care for children. And, and this gives the government the sort of rights to your children on some level, and the right to override a parent's decision in this very personal choice, as well as I personally do not believe a 10-year-old can make a choice so drastic as to do what I did. To do exactly what I did, but as 10-year-old people. And I think this law, from what I remember, was specifically targeting that, again, this gender affirming surgeries and this idea that anyone can be trans and that you don't need gatekeeping or all of these types of things. Am I correct in that? I think that's
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that this means that they cannot try to talk them out of it or question or challenge them on it on any level, if I'm not being mistaken about that.
Right. They're calling, so they call that conversion therapy, right?
Yeah.
But I said, but hold on here, wait a minute. So you can't talk a trans kid out of transitioning, but you can talk a gay child, because there probably are kids who are going into their sexuality at 13 and 11 and 10. That's puberty. You start to have these ideas around your own sexuality, or you start to feel attracted to the same sex. And if we are going to implement something that says you can't push back on a kid who thinks they are a boy or a girl, but you can push back on, they might think that they are attracted to the same sex of them, that's conversion therapy in itself. So it's very lopsided. This bill is very lopsided. And first off, as I said earlier on, I just do not believe a child of 10 or even 13 can actually make such a life-changing choice to be sterilized, to not have sexual functioning, to have no genital growth, to have bad bone growth, a person doesn't really come into their own mental sort of growth space of the brain until you're 25 years old. Well, that's an actual fact.
Yeah.
So there's so many facts that we're missing here and not understanding. The only reason that they want to give puberty blockers to these young people is for physical attributes. So the only thing the puberty blocker does is stop, say, a boy who wants to be a girl from having masculinized features, right? So like maybe growing facial hair or maybe growing an Adam's apple. I just don't understand how anyone could think that's healthy for a child, because puberty, everyone has puberty. Puberty is the reason we sort of go from a child to an adult. It's a very, very important part of a human being. And to sort of play around with puberty because you think, right, you as the adult think that this child is going to, on some level, not suffer, you're wrong. That's just not true.
I wanted to specifically ask about that because we see a lot of people saying that the hormone blockers used to quote unquote pause puberty, that they are completely or mostly harmless, and that they are simply a pause button on puberty that can be reversed safely if it comes to that. Do you agree with that assessment?
100% lies. Complete, total lies. And it's all coming out now, my friend. And over by where you are, like Sweden, Norway, Finland, they all stopped doing that. And they've been doing it way longer than we have. They've been doing it for 30 plus years, but very small, in a very controlled group, not Wild West like they're doing it here. They're just like throwing it at the kids. That's a lie. I can prove it. There's factual information about that. You cannot pause puberty. That is an actual lie. You can stop puberty for how much and then pick up again. But this time, This time right here that you have blocked, right? You're never going to get it back. And that could be a very detrimental time of growth. That could be brain growth, eye growth, bone growth, just on and on and on. Different genital growth. Genital growth is important on many levels. So is sex.
Yes.
Sex is important for humanity. It's how we're going to move forward. We're going to create a bunch of sterilized kids. So if anyone out there even thinks that that's a positive thing to do to a child, I think you're not stepping back for a moment. And so what if the child is suffering? Suffering is relative. You can't say what that is. I suffered, but look at me today, right? So I'm very, very grounded in my transition and very happy, but I made that choice as an adult. I did not make that choice as a child.
Yeah, exactly. And you've also labeled it emotional blackmail when people
Yes.
use the term, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter, or the reverse? And why
Wow.
is that?
Well, gosh, just think this, look at those words. Imagine you right now are standing in front of a doctor with your 10-year-old kid who says, I'm trans. And the doctor says to you, well, your kid says they're trans. If you don't do the medicine, you're going to kill your child. Because would you rather have a dead son or a live daughter? And I'm just like, who does that? What doctor would ever put a parent with no mental health care? You see what I'm saying? It's just get go. Your kid says they're trans, no questioning. That should have everybody alarmed. This is a mental disorder I have. It's actually here. It's not here. It's here in my brain. And so they're going after the physical space. They're not even going after the mental space. That should say everything to everyone here. They've taken out all mental health care and just giving kids this medication to physically change the way they feel. But what's happening with the mind? And that's a complete lie. We do not have a high rate of suicidal 10-year-olds who are killing themselves. Show me where they are.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that statistic myself, actually, truth be told.
That's right. Where are they? I'd like to see them. But so far, no one showed me any suicide. Maybe they have suicidal tendencies, but that could be for many reasons, right?
The numbers just don't back that up, right?
That's right. And I'm a factual based person, by the way. Yeah.
Well, it makes things easier, that's for sure.
For sure.
But I wanted also to ask, since I was asking about the hormone blockers and it being a pause button on puberty.
Yeah.
Surely, since we're now doing these operations in mass, or giving so many of them these puberty blockers, surely we must have some long-term research on the effects of halting puberty like this, right?
Well, that's such a great question. So I live in the United States of America, where they're ramping it up. Like we have over 100 gender clinics all of a sudden out of nowhere. And we have pediatric. The words pediatric and transgender should never be in the same sentence, ever. It just doesn't make sense.
That's a good point.
I'm like, what? We are totally losing our minds. So that being said, in Finland and Sweden, they actually have the actual studies, and those studies show that it doesn't work and why they are shutting it down. They do not find that it has done what America is saying. It's not true. And so wouldn't you believe the countries that have been doing it for 30 plus years over the country that has been doing it for maybe 5 years, if that?
Well, I'm certainly have a tendency to do that, especially when I see that the number of the amount of money that these clinics are raking in.
That's right, my friend.
I saw something around $2.5 billion, with an estimate of it growing to $5 billion in the next few years.
That's exactly right. And it is actually printed on the internet on a website called marketwatch.com. Anyone can look at it, just put in their transgender healthcare. And that's a stock market, right? So a place where you sort of put your money in places that you want to put your money. And they're telling you to put your money. They're literally telling you bet on transgender surgeries. I mean, I'm laughing, but not in a funny way, more in a sort of nervous, scary way.
I also wanted to ask, because you and I share the opinion that there are exceptions to every rule, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
I remember watching the video that you did with Blair White, where you said that you believe that there really are kids that actually benefit from this therapy. Would you elaborate on that?
Well, that's a great question. And of course, like I said, nothing is 100% on anything. I don't care what you do. And on some level, I could have been a quote unquote trans kid. You know, I could have been that. There's no doubt. I always felt like a boy. I always wanted to be a boy, all those things. I had gender dysphoria for my whole life, pretty much. But that being said, I just actually interviewed a 17-year-old transgender girl. So she started taking hormones at 15 and she seems super grounded. She went through 4 years of therapy, of all of that. That's what I'm trying to say is, you know, there are definitely kids who have gender dysphoria, but it's so small. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. My disorder is tiny, tiny, tiny. And I can prove that to you because in the 30 years I transitioned, there was very, very few people transitioning.
Yeah.
All of a sudden in the last 5 or so years, all these young people and they're all girls. So that says something.
Why is that, if I may interrupt?
Oh, well, I mean, my theory, and actually some of the studies they're doing is these girls all have sort of comorbidities, or they're dealing with sort of mental spaces. Like, you know, girls deal with puberty way different than boys do, right? I went through girl puberty. So you grow your boobs, and imagine if you're not feeling comfortable in your body. No girl feels comfortable when they're getting boobs.
Wait. Are you saying that teenage girls are not completely happy with themselves? Fuck, what are you saying here?
I know. I am. Yeah, right there. I don't even know why I'm explaining it.
That's absurd, my man.
So, you know, that they're dealing with that. They're dealing with life. And all of a sudden now they're throwing this card into the game and saying, well, if you're not happy with being a girl, you can be a boy. You tell me what 15-year-old girl isn't going to go, yeah, I get to be a boy and I don't have to have boobs and I don't have to have my period. And, you know, it's like we're literally dangling a cherry in front of this kid who isn't thinking about the years ahead.
The long-term consequences.
That's right. They're thinking, all kids think in the moment. I don't know one kid that thinks about 5 or 10 years. None of us did as children. We're always thinking about the moment. We're not thinking about in a year, am I going to be okay with this? That's why I find it to be absurd that we would ever give that opportunity to a young person. Now, with your question of, are there some? Yes, there are some, but they go through a long-term process. They don't just throw hormones at them.
I also wanted to ask, because I actually haven't fact-checked this part myself, but I do know that the female brain and the male brain are wired differently a bit.
That's right.
And I believe that there is scientific proof that people with gender dysphoria often have, women have male wired brain and vice versa. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, that some of the studies I've read, they do say that for sure. And, you know, whatever that means, right? There are people who live with dysphoria their whole life and don't transition like this, but they just kind of deal with it, right? Because, you know, to make this choice, what I did is irreversible. I'm so tired of hearing this. It's reversible. You can just stop taking hormones and go right. Do you think I could ever stop taking hormones and go back to looking like a lady? I'm going to work in the circus for the rest of my life.
You're putting my current little beard to shame, that's for sure. I also wanted to ask, I didn't have this one written down, but since you mentioned it, like being a father of 3 girls, I am very concerned about the body image and stuff that they go through in these years. And I also know that with the rise of social media, like I understand that self-harming has gone up something around 300%, and suicide among teenage girls has gone up about 150%. And most of it is, according to what I've read, tied to body image.
I wouldn't doubt it at all. Then, you know, having 3, I have a son, I have a 10-year-old son, so, which is so much easier than having girls. I really do feel that. I feel like the boys aren't getting targeted like the girls are. And I do think it's just a different space to be a girl, right? Girls start puberty. What happens? They get sexualized, right? Which also is not comfortable. It's actually not. Yeah, it's horrible. And, there's just all these things that girls have to deal with. And instead of us empowering these young girls and telling them, you know, that it's totally normal, everything's going to work out, you're going to be fine, you're going to go through this little hump, let's just get through it, we're telling them they can change their gender. That is absurd, totally absurd.
Yeah, I have personally been wondering myself as of what happened to, you know, you're awesome, raise each other up, stuff like that.
That's right.
Instead,
That's
it's gone
right.
in quite a different direction.
It's ridiculous. It's actually misogynist as far as I'm concerned. It's like a misogynist movement. And I feel like we're, you know, the fact that we even have to say to empower girls, we don't ever have to say that about boys or men, right? We don't ever have to. And if you notice, a lot of this movement is really being dominated by trans women. You know, if you really
Yes.
step back and look, you don't see a lot of people like me talking, right? When I'm a biological female, I was raised as a female. I have a different way of being. These things matter in this conversation, right? I was socialized completely different than the way you were. And so trans women are biological males. And I hope everyone is not going to freak out right now and call me transphobic.
Well, that would
But
be
that's factual. I'm talking facts, my friend. And so you can argue with me all you want. They're biological males and they have been, you know, socialized completely different than the way I have. So they come to the game. It's why I think they dominate the conversation more and why they have more control over this conversation.
All right. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking about, there has been an absolute explosion in the number of children and young adults, and even adults who are coming and saying that they are queer, trans, non-binary, etc.
Yep.
I don't know if you've been keeping count, but have you noticed the same or similar increase in the number of gays and lesbians, for example? Because
Nope. Great question. Great question. Nope. So the number of the LGB, right, the lesbian, gay, and bi is going down, while the number of trans, queer, Q, non-binary. That's really the crux of, I would say, this upswing, as well as the problems that are happening. It's the trans, queer, non-binary, and non-binary being the most boisterous of the whole group. They literally co-opted the trans space. Non-binary is not trans. It is not trans. They're choosing, right? I didn't choose this. I have an actual diagnosis. I have a mental disorder. I go through a system. I use medicine. I have an actual medical condition. Non-binary, you could be non-binary if you wanted. You could just say, I'm non-binary. Well, you could actually even say you're trans now, which is so absurd. But that's my point. My point is I'm not even near non-binary. Non-binary has nothing to do with trans. It has to do with an actual sort of like, and same with queer. Queer has been co-opted by straight people. Queer is a gay term. It's not my lifestyle. It's an actual term that we sort of took back because it was a derogatory statement towards us. So we took it back to sort of empower ourselves. And now this whole new group of people are calling themselves queer and non-binary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also wanted to, when you mentioned earlier, you spoke of fast tracking the process.
That's right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so fast tracking to me is when you take a child who says I'm trans at face value, right? So if your child says, I feel like a donkey, and you're just like, okay, cool. We'll buy you a donkey outfit and you get to go to school like a donkey and you get to drink water out of a little thing and you get to, snort like a donkey. Like that is fast tracking. When you take a child at face value and the child says, well, mom, I'm trans. And then the mom doesn't take the child through a system, but takes it to an affirmative therapist who says your child is trans. It's ridiculous. And so that's fast tracking. It's like, okay, let's get your kid on medicine. Let's get your kid in surgery. Let's go, go, go. Why are you in a hurry? Why is everybody in such a hurry?
Yeah, you said yourself that you went through a very thorough screening process before you transitioned.
Oh my gosh!
Could you tell us a little bit about that and
yes,
the pros and the cons of that?
Oh, yes, sir, I can. So again, 30 years ago, we didn't know anything about this. I transitioned here in Los Angeles. Both my endocrinologist and my surgeon who did my chest, none of them had ever worked with a guy like me. I was their first. They actually called me a guinea pig. I was literally a guinea pig. But I had to go to 2 years of a therapist who also didn't know what was going on. We were just kind of learning as we went. And it was a system, right? I like to call it safekeeping. People that don't like it call it gatekeeping, but I call it safekeeping because it saved not only my life, but it saved me from making the wrong choice. Back in the day, so I had to live as Buck. I had to walk the world as Buck. I had to sort of live in the male space to see how it fit on me. And just in case it wasn't going to work out, I didn't have surgery, no hormones, nothing. I just had to be Buck. And then that enabled me to say, well, no, I feel so much better this way. And that enabled me to take the next step of going into taking, hormone shots and eventually surgery. But I had what I guess you could call a cushion, right? A cushion to make sure. That's right. So that's the difference between what I did, which was an actual, pretty much of a system until you get to be this way, where today that's what fast tracking, there's no system. There's no system of checks and balances. There's just okay, you say you are.
Yeah, that was actually my next question, because I was about to ask, no doubt kids today are being screened carefully by psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, and other professionals before being allowed life-altering hormones or surgeries, right?
No. They're not. That's my point. They're literally not even having any psychological evaluations. We have something called affirmation therapy. They actually call it affirmation therapy, not therapy. So what affirmation therapy is, a trans therapist, right? LGBTQ plus PP poo poo therapist who literally takes the kid in and sits on the couch in 15 minutes, and I have total documentation by all the interviews I do with these kids that said, I was sitting on the couch with the therapist and all I had to say was, I'm trans. And the therapist says, okay, and asked 2 or 3 more questions, and that's it. You're trans. So that's not what you just said, which is going through a system, going back and forth, coming every week, maybe doing that for a year. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like really making the kid say, yeah, I really am. That's not happening anymore. It's a 15-minute intake and you are on hormones.
But I'm sure that there are a lot of parents out there who, because there's also been an explosion of trans and non-binary children here in Iceland.
Wow.
I'm sure that there are a lot of parents who have a hard time believing this because we are raised to trust the medical professionals.
Yeah, that's right.
This is probably very shocking and probably unbelievable to a lot of parents.
100% it is.
Must be very scary.
Oh my gosh, as a parent myself, and you're a parent, that's why these conversations are important. Parents have nowhere to go. They're scared because here I live in California, which is scary right now. They're passing laws that you have to affirm your child. They can literally snatch your child away from you as a parent because you're not affirming your child. So the government can take your child away. Watch out, Iceland. Watch out. This is the slippery slope right there. You think you're doing the right thing, you're doing the wrong thing. When you start letting your government interfere with your child and you as a parent, that is a dangerous space to be in. So yeah, right now in California, we're also called we're called the I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like the state where anybody could come and bring their child, because other states are against transitioning. This is sort of like the safe space state where you can come and your child will be transitioned here with no questions asked. So going back to that, I do know parents are struggling. They're struggling. And if there's one thing I could say to any parent out there whose child says they're trans, whose child says they're non-binary, okay, cool. Maybe you're trans and maybe you're non-binary. What does that mean? Push back a little on your kid. Don't be scared of that. And also do it out of love and just say, look, kiddo, I love you, but I want to know what this really means. You have to understand that it is not just, I am this. Let's take you to a therapist. Let's get you a little help. Maybe something like slowly easing into it is the best. I think kids are taking it on because it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to have that opinion, actually.
Yep.
This is also like a hard conversation to have because I, for one, I've always been very supportive of gay rights, lesbian rights, and I'm actually like I'm a huge supporter of any adult being allowed to do whatever makes them happy, right?
That's right.
And like if someone is a trans person, I will gladly call them he or she if they wish,
Yep. Yep.
as long as you're just respectful and ask. it's
That's right.
but
That's right.
it is pretty weird, right? That this started to be the explosion started as started to become
Yeah.
so profitable, right?
Oh, great point. Great. I mean, come on, man. Let's just be real here. There is money attached to this. There is no doubt. People all across the world would not be latching on to this if it's money. Money talks. Money is a thing. Medical world is gross. Pharmaceutical world is gross. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They want you to be on drugs. Once you create a patient, I'm a patient for life. I have to shoot testosterone every week. You know what I mean? Like I actually have to have that medicine. And so now they're creating young people who are going to be reliant on medication. Why would we want children to be reliant on medication? Why?
I actually know of parents of a trans child that
Okay.
they seem to be under the impression that that child can have their surgery or blockers. I don't know what their plan is, and that will be the end. Are you saying that will be
What?
on have to be on medication for the rest of?
Forever. They see what I mean? Parents don't even understand what they're doing. This child will forever be on some form of hormones. That means injection, pill, whatever. They will never naturally produce that hormone ever, ever. Not only that, puberty blockers screw up your whole hormonal space. So you have to take this particular one, then you have to take this one, and you're constantly going, oh my gosh, I don't wish this upon anyone. This is not fun. This is not yay. It's better for me. But heck, no way would I want this to be in any way, shape, or form. That's what I'm saying. These parents don't know what they're doing to their children.
But surely medical professionals would inform them of every step of this process, right?
Yeah, in a real great world where we really have really ethical medical 100%. But I don't know about where you are, but here we have unethical medical people. They're not telling the parents that at all. They're telling them what you said to me in the beginning, which was it's only a pause. They can go back to that's a complete total lie.
But we both agree that there are people out there who desperately need this
Yes.
treatment and
Yes.
would, as in
Yes.
your case, be miserable without it.
That's right.
Uh, are there any huge consequences other than related to appearance in delaying those? Do you know that?
Well, like for specifically puberty blockers, well, one of the really major things to me that's very important for everybody to understand is sterility. So you are sterilizing. That child will never be able to produce a baby ever. And not only that, sexual functioning. Sexual functioning goes down. How dare you take that away from a human being? The sexual pleasure and the things that everyone of humanity likes pleasure during sex, or if you choose not to, that's your adult
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
But what about having babies? What about those choices? You think a 10-year-old can make the choice to never want to have a baby? Heck no. An 18-year-old can't even make that choice. So the problem with doing puberty blockers is the two things is sterility and then genital growth. So if it's a boy that wants to become a girl and you're giving that 10-year-old puberty blockers, now their genitals are not growing. And you need the genitals to grow in order to make the
Ah,
vaginoplasty.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't make
I
vaginoplasty.
hadn't even
So
thought about that.
yeah, this is a huge important part of this equation. So now you're overriding genital growth, which means that now they're going to have to try to make a vagina through the colon. So there's an actual documented case of a trans woman here. She has a TV show. It's called Jazz Jennings, I think. She had puberty blockers at like 13. She didn't grow her penis. So now she had to have her colon, a piece of her colon used to make her vagina.
That sounds odd.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Insane.
You and Blair White, you spoke that the definition of trans has been expanded. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, also, I kind of think on some level it's been co-opted or appropriated. So now what we have is transgender. It's an umbrella term. It doesn't stand for one thing, right? When you say transgender, you can see an umbrella, and then you see 5 billion different things under that umbrella. Everything from transgender man, transgender woman, to non-binary, to trans masculine, to trans animal. They even have trans animal under that. So, oh my gosh. And so then there's that's okay. Then there's transsexual, which is me, which they took out of the umbrella because they said transsexual is antiquated, old, it's derogatory. Like, what? It is so, how rude. It's not, you're calling me derogatory. So that's what I keep telling you. There's a difference between a transsexual and a transgender. A transsexual is a medical space who gets a diagnosis, who is really living in the binary. So I transitioned to live as a man, and Blair transitioned to live as a woman. And we made ourselves look like men and women. And that's the big difference between us and them. We don't even resonate with those people over there. They're doing something that's just completely different than what we have done.
Have you ever regretted your choice?
Never, never. It's been the most amazing. I'm here because of it. I don't want to even talk about suicide or any of that. I'm here because of it. I did struggle with alcohol and drugs and things that, kids and people do, but I made it through to the other side because of my transition. And it's why I know there are people who need this, and why I sit here today to tell you that there are people like me, many people like me, but many people like me also don't agree with the necessity of the large amount of young people who think they're trans with no diagnosis. That's what we're trying to say. When I cannot self ID. That's just not possible. You need to go through a system to figure out what's going on with you.
Well, we certainly agree that we're both very happy that there are gatekeeping in place so that
That's
people
right.
can actually. I don't think we would be speaking if we didn't agree on this.
That's right. No, I do speak to people who have opposing opinions with me all the time, but I always walk away as friends. Especially like really alt-right sort of spaces here in America, and they're willing to have me on the show. They don't agree with what I did, but they respect my choice. You see the difference there? I don't care if you really agree with what I've done. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to show you that I did it, and I'm a functioning human. And I think anybody would want that. They don't want me to be miserable or not functioning. I participate in the world. And that's really what transitioning is all about. You don't live in a transition. You transition from A to B to move back into the world and be successful at being a human being.
Well, I also think it's one of the things that makes this discussion so hard is the polarity that's going on here.
Yes,
You either have to be all in on a cause or you're an enemy. You can
that's
agree
right.
90%, but
That's
if you
right.
disagree with the last 10%, I don't have to tell you this. I've seen the shit that you've been getting on well, everywhere pretty
Everywhere.
much. Yeah. And it's obviously undeserved as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you, Fred. It doesn't matter. I mean, for me, it just says I'm doing something right. You know that when your own community tries to shut your voice down, I'm like, okay, something's amiss here. I'm a 30 plus year transitioned person. I've been in this community 30 years fighting to change laws all over the world. And then they attack me. That's not my community. That's that trans, non-binary. They're scared of their own shadow.
Could
And
you? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
cut
that's
you off.
okay. No, it's okay.
Could you explain to me the difference between something that you went through, where you knew so early on about that you felt like a man, and that you this was a feeling that you just was so strong that you could not deny it,
That's right.
and the
That's right.
difference of people coming in and having to convince kids that they are
Yeah,
trans. This does not
that's right.
feel like the same thing to me.
Totally different. No one ever had to convince me that I wanted to be a man or a boy. I mean, my mom will tell you at 4 years old, I was wearing my dad's underwear and cowboy boots. And I even would take a bottle of beer at 4 and just be like, like, but kids do that. That doesn't mean I'm trans.
No, no.
But what I'm trying to say is that forever, I was always really just wanting to be a boy and I was really sucked into that space. I only hung out with boys. I wanted to do boy things. I had crushes on girls. I mean, I think I was just like a little boy. Then when puberty happened, that did cause a lot of trauma inside of me. I didn't know I was a transsexual person. All I knew is I wanted to be a man. That's the difference between now and today. I didn't have that language, thank God. And so as I grew up and I started to get into this female body, that was when my dysphoria really went off the rails. And I started drinking a lot and, doing a lot of drugs. And until like maybe for like, gosh, so many years, probably the age of 16, it started all the way until probably the age of 28. I was all over the place. I mean, I'm writing my book right now. I'll send you a copy when it's done because you won't even believe it. You won't even believe what I went through. I was a fashion model. I was a female fashion model traveling Europe doing as a woman, blah, blah, blah. But I was drinking and doing drugs but I didn't understand. I did not understand. I would just tell people I feel like a man, and I would get shut down constantly because nobody, this was the 80s, 70s and 80s. Nobody had that terminology in any way, shape, or form. No, yeah. I ended up, being a very masculine woman and hanging out with gay women. And I will tell you that I love that part of my life. I don't think it was a bad thing. I loved it, but I couldn't live in that space. It just wasn't happening for me. And yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to, because you had such a strong urge. The difference I am seeing between your story and some of the stories we are hearing today is that you felt the undeniable urge that you were a man. Not that just that you were unhappy in your body, but that you were a man.
That's right. That's exactly
Is that different than what we're discussing today a lot of times?
Well, yeah, from what I see, from my vantage point, I see different. I see that's why they wrote that book, or they talk about rapid onset gender dysphoria, right? That's a thing that's been coined during this time because all of a sudden out of nowhere, all these young girls increase 4,000% young girls transitioning or calling
4,000%.
Yes, 3 zeros, 40. Wow. In what other world does that happen on anything? Nothing. There's no disorder. There's no nothing that actually raised 4,000% in a small amount of time. It says everything. It says social contagion. So all of a sudden, these young girls are like, I'm trans. And their parents are like, what? And oh, yeah, I'm a boy or I'm a man. What? They were always very feminine. So the difference between them and me and people like me is I dressed like a boy. I wanted to be a boy. I never thought differently. All of a sudden, these girls are like, I want to be trans. They're saying, I want to be trans. They're not saying, I want to. Yes, there you go. There you go. I want to be. Yes.
I remember you speaking about that you didn't want this. For you, this was a very private thing and that you actually tried to fight it.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes. I did. I totally did because, also people were telling me just accept your, masculinity as a woman, just to try to embrace your female stuff, try to embrace your period. I was hanging out with all these sort of like lesbian, witches. They're like, just embrace it. So I'm like, I can't embrace it. Give me another beer. so, it's like, God, it's so crazy. But that's where I did try to embrace it. I wasn't told, oh, I'm trans, go. That's why you see a huge amount of these young girls, what we call now detransitioning, right? They're saying, oops, I made a mistake. And that's just not a mistake you want anybody to make. They're cutting their breasts off. They're getting hysterectomies. They're growing mustaches. They're losing their hair. You know what I mean? They're like, look.
I wanted to shoot in a question in exactly this because I wanted to see, like, what if someone who's had this treatment changes their mind later on? Can they go back to their old life?
Wow. So it really depends on the amount of time you were on testosterone. Now, testosterone damages the body because it's not a natural hormone in my body. I'm a biological female sticking a substance that is not natural to my body. It wreaks havoc on your body. So these young people who, it depends again, if they're on it for 6 months, I've seen girls go on 6 months and then go off and they don't have really a lot of damage or they don't have a lot of physical changes. But if for girls who are on it for 3 to 5 years, 100%, they're growing facial hair. Some of them are going bald. Maybe they cut their breasts off. They're not going to go back to ever looking the way they looked before. They're going to have masculine characteristics forever. Deeper voice, right? You know, all of these things that are not, they're not reversible.
That sounds like a horrible thing to put on someone, someone young. Like if you put that on your child and they do decide that they don't, this is not what they want. They have to live with
that's
this.
Why I would never
for the
make
rest of their life, right?
That's right. It's why I, as a parent, and I'm a transsexual, if my kid told me today, Dad, I'm trans, I'm like, I don't even know what that means, dude. He's like, well, I want to be a girl. I'm like, I don't know what that means, dude. And he's like, well, what? And I'm like, well, we're going to therapy. You can paint your fingernails. I don't care. You know what I mean? You can do those things, but you're not trans. I would push back on him, and I would not transition my child unless I really was through serious therapy for a couple years and I really understood he's still not going back to this way. I would push back on it. I actually would. And so that's what I'm trying to say, is to actually put your kid on hormone blockers the minute someone says they're trans. I think you're doing a disservice to your child. You know, so what if your child is suffering, whatever that means, right? What are they going to do? They're not going to kill themselves. I mean, that trope is misused, and, you know, somebody could definitely try to kill themselves, but the amount and way that they're saying it is so gaslighting. And, you know, I just think letting a kid grow into their space, and then if they still feel that way, we'll move forward on that.
Because even if it's a little bit contradictory, well, some would say it's somewhat contradictory to my page and theme, and the show itself, is that I don't believe that there is a wrong way to be a girl or a boy.
That's right. Thank you for saying that. That is excellent. Excellent. Because that's the problem. We're going back in time. Remember when we fought for gender stereotypes? We fought to let girls be masculine and punch out and play with trucks. And then we fought for dudes to wear a dress. Who cares? And paint their nails and have long hair and maybe do more feminine things, right? That's what we fought for so many years, and what I fought for back in the day. There's no reason why a girl can't wear pants and a boy can't wear a dress, but we've regressed. And all of a sudden, if a boy has long hair, he must be a girl. What? Are we living in 1950?
That's a very weird way to think, especially, as you said, after everything that was fought for, because the advice I would give to anyone is, if you're looking for this result, this might be best for you, but that doesn't mean that there is a wrong way. The only thing I believe is wrong is to be a simp. But
yeah, right on. Excellent.
I also wanted to ask here that an argument used by many, if not most, who support this practice, they say that there are no surgeries happening on minors or people under 18. What do you think about that statement?
Lies, total lies. Again, gaslighting, lies. We have tons of video information, little 13-year-old kids on TikTok showing off that's a complete lie. We've already blown those people out of the water. That's why you need to listen. Why, if it's so safe, and why, if it's so great for these kids, are they making these lies? Why are they saying stuff like that? That's the part that people really need to understand here. I never lie about anything. I talk about my biology. I'm pretty upfront about who I am. I don't need to lie to you. There's no need for me to lie to you. It doesn't matter if you accept it or not. It's my reality and the truth. But they're lying to you about all of this stuff for a reason. And that's the part we should all be scared about. When the medical world starts to lie to us about doing stuff to young people, that has to be one of the most scariest things I've ever. That's like Nazi experimenting or some crazy stuff.
I don't think any parent would do that willingly.
No.
On their child.
No. That's what I'm talking about. They're being gaslit. They're being put into a space of not being able to make the right choice. They're being forced to make the choice.
Yeah, but by the emotional blackmail and stuff that we discussed earlier, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, like, we're both parents. We both could understand. If a doctor told us you have to do this or your child will kill themselves, pretty much you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, are these operations and hormone therapies being actively marketed to minors, would you say?
Yes. Yes.
Why would you think that is?
Money and money, 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 money. There's a doctor here in Florida who is marketing. Her whole thing is on TikTok. She's on TikTok, an actual surgeon, adult surgeon on TikTok. Yeet the teats, she's called. Yeet the teats. And she's doing like 30 to 40 surgeries a month on young people. Is this I mean, it's beyond you can't even believe this is real.
No, I did not know about this.
Yes, and I'll find the link and send it to you. Oh, she got kicked off TikTok finally. We were all pushing to get her off TikTok because she was marketing to, 16, 15-year-old. Even I think the youngest she's done is 13. Can you imagine cutting the breasts off a 13-year-old young person?
No, not really.
Nope.
I don't wanna think about it, to be honest.
I know, it's horrifying. It's like a scary movie.
It also bothers me that, to be honest, that there are so many people that, because I actually think that most activists truly have the best interests at heart,
Sure.
just like we do, even if we obviously
Uh-huh.
considerably disagree on the how and the why and when,
Yep.
especially perhaps.
Yep. I think you're totally right. And I don't think the trans right activists that I'm talking about have that. And I don't think that they live in reality. And I think that they're angry. And I think that they have an agenda. So that's not good activism to me. When you have just an agenda or you're going off of things that are not factual, how is that activism? That's something else. That's sort of on some level indoctrination. Now, you see what I'm saying? How they're sort of disguising indoctrination as activism. That's scary. So I don't really think those people are actual real activists. I think that they have an agenda, which is to transition children and to lie to us about it.
I know for a fact that there are plenty of concerned parents, but I know for a fact that there is not much known on this subject in Iceland in general,
Right.
because you don't see this in papers except when it's only painted in positive lights, and just for asking questions you get labeled all sorts of things. What
I
would
can't
you?
believe it got to Iceland. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that gender ideology got to Iceland. It's so scary. So I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm
No,
just
no,
blown
it's
away.
fine. I was pretty much just looking for like your opinion, if you wanted to say something to like parents who maybe don't know about this stuff. Like
I'm
obviously
gonna
you've said plenty.
I'm gonna send you after this. I'll email you a couple of links that you should put with this so that they can check. There's a couple great organizations. One called GenSpec, GenSpect.org. They deal with parenting and transitioning, and they're excellent. They have lots of resources, all of that. I would suggest that parents of kids really start to pay attention to what this is. It's a social contagion. It's not real. So, but the problem with the social contagion is that these kids aren't just goth kids, right? Or punk rock kids, or these kids are wanting to do surgeries. They're wanting to do hormones. They're wanting to do damage because they don't understand the repercussions to all of this. And so that's the scary part to me, that this got all the way over to Iceland, and Iceland government is sort of like just going along with it. All of these governments are going along with it. It's shocking. That's why it's important for me as an elder person to speak up, and why I really appreciate you bringing me on here to sort of push back on all this, because I don't think there's enough people like me stepping up and saying things for fear of, I don't care about being liked. I do not care about being liked. I do not care about being a part of a group. I've never been a group thinker. I'm very independent. It's why I am who I am. But I think by me speaking up, it's going to give courage to people in Iceland to speak up.
I think it's also about credibility, because I don't care about being liked either, but I'm very, very, I feel very strongly that this should not be coming from me. if that makes sense.
No, and that's why you're great. That's why you're great, my friend, because that's very smart of you. You are entitled to have these opinions, but they don't resonate as hard. It's like, I can't speak for Black people, right? I can say, yeah, I understand racism and I want to help get rid of it, but I can't sit here at the mic and start to speak about being Black and all that. It's the same thing. You have to bring somebody who lives that experience.
Exactly.
And there's not very many older transsexual men like me who are willing to step up to the plate and have this conversation. So that's why I appreciate you, because you do see what's going on and you are willing to bring somebody like me on here, because it totally legitimizes you. You're not saying it, you're asking me, is this what's happening? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's happening.
I've actually gotten messages through my Instagram from trans people and people that are friends with trans people who say that they feel very strongly about this, but they do not dare speak up. Can you understand why that is?
I do. Oh, because they're going to lose their job. Also, remember, humans are tribal, right? We like to be in packs. We enjoy being community. Community is a big deal. These things are important to most people. So I think they fear losing that community space, and they're more willing to sort of go along with the trope or the idea to not lose that space. I'm not. And I think it's also, you got to remember that I've been around for a long time and I've seen a lot of change, and I don't need to be part of that. So I think because my age, on some level, age is great. It gives you an ability to see things in a different way than a lot of these younger people are fearful. And I don't blame them. I completely understand. That's why I said, I'll do it.
Yeah. I specifically mentioned in my first episode of the podcast where this will be appearing, I will send you
thank you.
An episode, of course.
Excellent.
But the other ones are all in Icelandic, so it wouldn't do much for you. But I specifically mentioned that I didn't really want to do this, but I kept waiting for someone else to do it, but no one did. Yep. So it's
So good for you. That means you care. Look, my friend, if anyone's calling you transphobic or throwing stuff at you, it's not true. You're not. You're literally having the conversation with me. That makes you actually pro-trans. All it makes you is a person who says, hold on, wait a minute here. What's happening? This is weird. I need to question this. And that means you care. It doesn't mean that you hate on us. It means you are concerned with the future of transsexual people. And, you have 3 kids. What if one day your kid says to you, I feel trans? You need to be ready for that. And no parent can be ready right now with all the lies and the deceit and the nonsense that's happening. You watch, it's going to be so sad what happens in the next 5 years. So sad. Everyone's going to go, what? How did we let this happen? And we're going to go, but dude, we were sitting here saying it. Me and you are going to go, we were here talking about it, but nobody is listening to us. I'm telling you, I can see the future and it's not good.
Yeah, that means a lot coming from you. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that.
Right on. Thank you.
Could you? We went into earlier, right? What was the difference between being transgender and transsexual, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to tick that off here.
Yes, we did. Great.
And we also went into, you get a lot of hate for speaking about this.
Something that people need to understand is hate is not necessarily a bad thing. For me, I look at it like I'm doing something right. I know in my heart that I'm standing on the right side. I know it. Right now, I'm taking a real beating, but that's okay. I know that I'll come out of it. I've come out of everything: homelessness, alcohol addiction, crack addiction, all of it. I've been a mess. And here I stand today. So a couple trannies kicking me in my balls, I don't care. Kick me harder.
I actually, when discussing that you were coming to an interview here, I actually compared you to an Icelandic gay man whose name is Páll. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was like kind of like the gay of Iceland back in the day. And in a recent episode I said that's, even if he doesn't get mentioned in that context, that's one of the manliest things you can actually do. It's to not give a fuck. Just be yourself, even if the whole country is,
That's right. That is
shit
actual. Right on,
proud.
friend. I stand proud and I will not back down from anybody. Come at me. I tell them all the time, come at me. They never do. I'm at the Starbucks right here on Sunset. I'll meet you. Here's the address. Crickets, never show up. I'm like, I'll literally show up, dude. And that's how I know it's blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? That's the part that I think I'm trying to explain to people out there who are fearful to say anything. It's not real. It's all an illusion. They've been saying cancel Buck Angel for 10 years. Here I am. I'm actually getting higher. I'm actually going even bigger up.
Yeah, so, you blew up recently, especially, right?
Yeah, right on.
I was saying that I got really lucky to catch you.
It means a lot that you reached out to me. It means, again, I'm not here to be popular. I'm here because I care about kids. I don't care what an adult does. If you make a mistake, that's on you, guy. I didn't. You can go to Google now. I did it when you didn't even have Google. So if you're going to make a mistake, I'm sorry, but you have a lot of information about why to transition and why not to. But no way does a child. I'm here for the kids. You know what I mean? Even the trans kids who feel like that. But I'm for these kids who are getting sucked into something that is so detrimental to the future of not only them, but to us, to the trans community. It's going to hurt us.
Yeah, parents and obviously all family members involved.
That's right.
Yeah, and as you said, the trans community.
That's right.
If it's as bad as you say, and I'm not saying it isn't, obviously, I always want to include that if.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be very hard to get that trust back.
That's right.
I assume.
That's right. That this is an important thing for some of us, and that's what I don't want to get lost in this, that, oh, well, there's no such thing as trans. You know what I mean? There's no way people need to trans. People will start to say that, and that it's all false. And they already are saying stuff like that. And that can't happen because there are so many people like me who need this medicine. And it's a shame that we're in this position to fight our own. That's why I'm telling you, that's not my community. I don't know what those people are doing. I don't know why they want to be trans so bad. I don't know why they've co-opted it to make it this sort of identity space. It's bizarre to me. But that's why I really draw that line between a person like myself and this sort of other thing that's going on over here.
One thing I wanted to say, and I know you mentioned this earlier, but I want to delve a little bit deeper into it. And that's that there's a loud argument that there's hardly any detransitioners. Do you agree with this?
Oh, gosh. My YouTube channel is really devoted a lot to what I call the voiceless of the trans community because they get shut out. So that's a lie, a complete total lie. There is a Reddit, that website Reddit, and there's an actual detransitioner group. I think today the person told me there's over 44,000 people in that group. Now, they're not all transitioned, but they all have some form of it. But there's at least 10 or 20 of them that are detransition people. And I interviewed tons of them. These are young girls. They're all young girls who transitioned at 16.
And I wanted to just mention it one more time because you are someone that's very deeply involved in this issue.
Yes.
It's not like you're just talking out of your ass and you've lived it and you're helping other people deal with this, yes?
Oh my God, these kids break my heart. I could cry right now. It's so sad that they've ruined their whole lives. Do you know that? People don't understand this. These kids have ruined their lives. They have no breasts anymore, probably can never have a baby, and now they want to go back to living as a woman. Their mental state of being is all over the place. Most of these kids had some form of trauma, right? That's the other. We're not addressing trauma. A lot of them have sexual trauma. A lot of them have some kind of stuff, OCD, disorders of the brain, disorders of whatever, all kinds of stuff going on, anxiety, depression, and they went straight to transitioning them. I mean, I'm telling you, almost every single detransitioner I interviewed, they had a 15-minute to a 45-minute intake and given hormones the same day. And then they said, oh, go to YouTube and learn how to inject the hormones. What? They don't even teach the kids the correct way to do it. It's very dangerous. If you have an air bubble in the actual syringe, that's dangerous. That is actually dangerous.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's just absurd to teach a kid. Oh, that's okay. Can you imagine if you go to the doctor to learn, do you have diabetes? And the doctor goes, oh, go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and figure it out on your own.
That sounds very likely to happen.
Oh, yeah. dude, it's so messy.
But
Wow.
again, I wanted to ask about one thing. I was I've been approached by a few parents from a school in Iceland
Mhm.
who were saying that the organization 78, Samtökin 78, for queer people of Iceland, that they are going into schools asking students questions such as if they are boys or girls, and if they are sure, they press them even further on the issue, how they can be sure about it. This
Oh
comes
my God.
from the child itself
Oh
that
my
was present,
God. Oh my
and then they tell them things such as if they feel, because obviously some of the older students wanted to like ask a few ridiculous questions such as if they felt that like they were bunnies, and they said your parents should treat you as bunnies, and if their parents don't, report them, and the organization will always be for them. What's your opinion of stuff like this? I have more than one stories, well, more than a few of actually of happenings like this.
Oh my God, it's happening here too. First off, if your child feels like a bunny, okay, I don't know the age that these, do you have an age
Down
group?
to 11 at least.
My God. So we know kids play with that, but not at 11. Again, I have a 10-year-old. He would never say he's a bunny rabbit. You know what I mean? So that's if an 11, 12, 13-year-old person is saying that they are actual bunny rabbit, and you're telling this child they are, and you're telling them if their parents don't affirm it, then their parents are bad parents, that's indoctrination, right? That's what cults do. That's how they literally get you into a form of thinking. Because kids, why do you think kids are always on the forefront of cults or things that they indoctrinate the youth? Because the youth have no fear, right? It's. I mean, I could use the example of the Nazi party. They did Nazi youth. They did that on purpose in
The
order to
Hitler Youth, I
the
believe they
Hitler
were.
Youth. I
Yeah.
mean, my God, dude, it's throughout history. So on some level, this is indoctrination. Children don't need to know that crap. Number one, number two, there's a thing called men and women. Period. Period. There's nothing else. Everything else is a choice that you want to make because you're whatever you're doing there. I don't give a shit. But that being said, men and women, done. Biology, done. They're telling these kids that that's not true. I would whip my kid out of that school so fast and I would sue the crap out of them. This organization is an indoctrination organization. It has
Well,
nothing.
suing in Iceland doesn't work the way it does in the US, unfortunately. Well,
We love
fortunately.
to sue. We love to sue shit here. We're like, sue everybody. But I don't know. I feel very mad, as you can see. I feel very mad about that. There's no way pro LGBTQ. Kids will figure it out when they get older. Why are you talking about stuff like that now? Why are you confusing them? You're confusing these kids when you say stuff like that, and that's not good for their mental health.
I wanted to take this same example and mention that for the first parent that came to me to speak about this,
Yeah.
she said that she had an 11-year-old daughter, and
Yeah.
that two of her friends were, I quote, non binary, and the third was transgender and polyamorous.
Oh my God. How
She,
old?
11. I doubt she knows what it means, but she was adamant that she was also polyamorous. I just wanted to take the most ridiculous
Unbelievable.
example I could find.
Polyamorous is a sex.
Polyamorous.
That's sexual. How does a kid even doesn't even understand? That's my point. You made such a great point right now. They're just latching on because they want to be a part of. It's a cool thing to do right now. And honestly, if all they said they want to be trans, who cares, right? That's why I don't care about non-binary. Who cares? But the problem is these kids are 11. These kids are 11 years old, and you are lying to them. There is no such thing as non binary. Non binary is just a cool thing to be. It's not real. It's an actual identification you choose to be. It has nothing to do with anything other than every single one of these non binary people are going to grow out of it. You watch.
I'm also
You watch.
pretty personally. I am pretty certain that a lot of people would be less supportive of that if they knew where it came from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You said it. There you
It's
go.
I'm going
That's
to mention that in a later episode, actually,
Great,
from
great.
where this comes from. And
Great.
yeah, people would probably be a lot less forgiving of that if they knew
But they
that.
don't know where it comes from. So
No.
that you see what I'm talking about? And if people understood the history of transsexualism and all the experiments, you know, I'm going to throw out the name Dr. Money. Just go ahead and research Dr. Money. You're going to see exactly what I'm talking about now. He already did these experiments on young kids. So now we're just redoing the whole experiment again. It's an experiment. We are using children to experiment on. There are no basis to any of these medications. These medications are being used off label. They're not even made for transgender kids. They're made for something very specific. And we're still using them. And I can tell you, I know so many women who are on Lupron who have so many health problems. They're never going to be the same. Yet we're giving it to a 10-year-old.
Could you, I know that you are somewhat of an expert on Lupron. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know for a fact that a lot of people have no idea what that is or what it's alternatively used for.
Oh my gosh.
History.
Well, so the first thing it was used for was cancer. So they started using it as a cancer drug. And I think that they stopped doing that because they found that it wasn't working. Then from there, they started using it to stop predators in prisons, right? So it sort of sterilized them so they couldn't have sexual function in prison. That should say everything.
Chemical
right there.
castration, right?
Chemical castration. Now, and then they started using it on women for female reproductive problems down there. It could be anything from like ovarian stuff to, so it shuts down. It's a hormonal medication that shuts down that's why they used it for cancer, so that it didn't get involved with the cancerous drugs, so that you could move the hormones over here. It's a hormonal imbalancing drug. It's so dangerous. In fact, Lupron, the company, it had like a $285 million lawsuit against them that they lost. They paid out the money. They just changed the name of the drug. All they did is, and that's how it got right back on the market again. Never trust these pharmaceutical companies. They have nobody's best interest in any. They want to keep you on the medicine.
I can't believe they would do something unethical.
Right on. Me either, dude. I'm so shocked. Hilarious. This is sick. That's why anyone could Google. And also, I'm going to give you this website. It's called pubertyblockerssuck.org. It has all the information about all of this crap that has nothing to do with being trans and should never be given to a child. It is going to destroy these kids' bodies.
Do you know why they stopped sorry about that, why they stopped using Lupron for chemical castrations in several countries?
Yeah, I think they had lawsuits. I do think that. I'm not 100% sure, but I also think that people in the prisons were saying that was inhumane, right? So I think that many people didn't think it was appropriate to be giving prisoners stuff that will sterilize them or castrate them. So, and I'm like, what? These are sex offenders. Like, we care. These are raping little kids. Like, no, they don't get, sorry, they don't get compassion. Moving forward.
I think we agreed on an hour, and we are approaching that time. I have two questions.
Excellent. Okay.
I would ask, what would you tell parents of very young children who are facing this situation with medical professionals telling them to transition them? What would you advise them to do?
Yes. First off, I wouldn't listen to that doctor, and that scares. You should be scared if that's the only thing your doctor's telling you. Number two, seek out a therapist that is non-affirmation. I don't know what's going on over in Iceland with the therapy stuff, but I would look for a therapist who's a really great adolescent therapist, and that because they need therapy. They don't need medicine. They need therapy. Number three, I'm going to send you some names of some organizations like GenSpec I put out there. It's a worldwide organization. Seek out other parents who are also questioning. Do not seek out parents who have transitioned their children because they're very rabid. They're very focused on transitioning their children. They will not have nuance. This is a nuanced conversation. I'm just going to tell you that it should be the last resort. Medication should always be the last resort.
How about, would you say that take their time with it, or
slow and steady wins the race, right? We all know that. I was a professional runner. My coach was always like, slow and steady wins the race, and I won every race. So that's what it is. Why are you rushing to transition? That's how you make mistakes.
Especially with the consequences that we mentioned earlier, but you're robbing them of, even if it's the right thing to do, right?
That even, whatever that means. Whatever that means. This idea, suffering. What does that even mean? That's so ridiculous. Suffering. Come on, kids suffer all day. They don't want to do their homework. They want to go play video games all day. They're suffering. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on, step up, parent. It's your job to make sure that your child reaches an age enough that you can send them off and they have an amazing life. And that's all I'm trying to say is slow down. Your child might be trans, so that's a possibility. But if you look at the statistics of how many kids are actually really trans, it's tiny, tiny, tiny. Try to find out why your child thinks that. Where did they get that language from? Why all of a sudden out of nowhere do they say they're trans? These are the things that are super important. But if you notice your kid has always been sort of acting like a boy or a girl, then that's another situation you should address.
And as well as the physical thing, like, so if even if, as you said, it's the right thing, or I said, if it was the right thing to do, you would still want to wait due to the physical ramifications of all of it, right?
I just interviewed a young girl who transitioned at 15. She did not do puberty blockers. Her parents they didn't do it. She is amazing. She says it's the best thing she ever did. Puberty is important. It's important for all of us. If you do not let people gaslight you, there's no such thing as reversing the damage that puberty blockers will do to your child. It's not true. It's an actual lie. Number one. Number two, you have to go through puberty in order for your child to actually be able to move forward, even in the transition. So whatever people are telling you about puberty, they're lying. And those puberty blockers will screw up your child for the rest of their life.
I think it's also like so annoying, if that's even a word, maybe even infuriating, that people like you and me, we actually want people to be happy. And
right.
I find it very hard to trust any ideology or any cause for that matter where you're not allowed to ask questions.
Bam. You just hit it. Bam. That's a cult. When you can't ask questions and people are starting to call, and what do they do when you ask a question? Transphobe, turf, bigot, grifter. I mean, I could go on and on and on, right? Well, wait a minute here. I'm just asking a question. I'm not saying it's not true. That should say everything to you. Why can you ask me all the questions? Why am I completely open and okay? Why do detransitioners have no effect on me other than in my heart? They don't make me feel less than that I made the wrong choice. They make me feel compassion for them because they didn't do what I did, and they should have never been put in that place. There's nuance in everything, people. Stop feeling like everything is so black and white. It's not. Nothing is. Nothing, and the whole world is. So why are trans kids have no nuance? Why is it just this way or the highway? That's what people need to start to see. You need to see, why are we fast tracking kids? What is the hurry? What is the rush? That makes me feel like something's wrong. Also, that it's an experiment.
Yeah, I was about to ask the last question, which was, why should anyone listen to you on this issue? Aren't you just yet another transphobe? But I think you answered that beautifully.
I'm a transphobe, 100%. 30 years into my transition, I'm 100% a transphobe. And, that's why people should listen to me. And also, you don't have to believe everything I'm saying. I'm not the end all be all. A lot of this stuff is my opinion. But I am spitting some facts as well. But a lot of this is my opinion as an elder transsexual who really does believe people need to do this. But do 10-year-olds need to do this? I'm going to disagree on that. There's going to be that one kid out of 1,000 that might benefit from this. But let's pull back on this rush to transition children. Please, parents, please just know that your child needs love and guidance right now. They don't need medicine.
Yeah, I think we cannot state that enough, that we both of us agree that there are children and adults who truly need this.
That's right.
And someone always has to ruin it for the rest of them, as people
It's so real, my friend. Like, who are these freaks? They've literally co-opted trans, and I have my conspiracy theories on that. We'll talk about next time.
I would love to have you on another time if you.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. Well, do this and then see what your community says, and if they want to have me back, we could do that again, my friend.
I'm sure they would love to.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're extremely busy, so
it's all good. No, this is all good. This is what I do, and it means a lot to me that you see me and you hear me, and you're also, as a person who's not transsexual, you're awesome, my friend. You care. You see things here that are hard to talk about, but you're willing to sort of bring it to the world, and this is how we're going to come back to reality. Because me and you have completely opposite lives, but here we are having a conversation in order to help us, get back into a real space. The stuff that's happening in the world is scary, and it's really confusing people, especially young people. And that's what I want to say is thank you, because you care, and that means a lot to me.
Well, I really appreciate you feeling that way, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. So I'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, until the next time. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, friend. Have a great night. Well, I'll talk to you on Instagram later.
Will do.
Right on, dude. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye.
Eins og kemur skýrt fram í þessu, eða ég vona að hafi komið skýrt fram, þá eru hvorki ég né Bökk á móti transfólki á einn eða annan hátt, og síst af öllu erum við á móti því að þau fá að njóta sín í því sem að þeim líður að sé sinn raunverulega rétti líkami. Það eina sem við erum að benda á í þessu viðtali hversu mikilvægt það að þú hafir allar upplýsingar til að taka rétta ákvörðun. Því að þessi ákvörðun eins og kom fram, hún verður aldrei tekin tilbaka. Og eins og Bökk bendi svo réttilega á, jafnvel þó að 100% staðfest tilfelli sé að ræða, að þá svo mikilvægt líkanlega séð að ganga í gegnum gelgjuskeið en stoppa það ekki af með hormónablokkurum. Þetta svo stór og mikilvæg ákvörðun að það bara nauðsynlegt að allir sem að koma að málinu hafi réttar upplýsingar þegar kemur að því. Og svona ákvörðun sé ekki tekin í flýti. Og ef þú foreldri sem átt barn sem í þessari aðstöðu, sjálf eða sjálfur í þessari aðstöðu, þá verður þú bara að passa að gera sem rétt fyrir þig með upplýstri ákvörðun. Ég vona að þessi þáttur hafi reynst ykkur gagnlegur og allar kveðja ykkur hérna úr flensubælinu. Takk kærlega fyrir mig.